bam, bam.
They're showing us the same trailer on purpose, right?
No, yeah, they're doing this and then they're gonna talk about you. Where?
Yeah.
They won't stop hunting you. None will stop hunting you.
It's the same trailer we've seen before. But they're gonna talk about something, right? The Decalogue?
Okay, can you just we need to listen. Okay, I'm live streaming right now.
Bro. Swear, where? They're gonna talk about the PC and stuff. Where?
Yeah, security breach.
Where?
Beach.
See? See?
Welcome everybody. We're here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's security breach.
Yeah, it's a devlog. Okay, everyone shut up.
How Steel Games is implementing ray tracing.
Yeah, do it to full screen.
It's a very broad topic here, lots of different ray tracing components and
Okay, dude, I know your headphones.
But how you guys are doing with ray tracing in this game and what that experience has been like for you. My name is Richard Calgill. I'm the ray tracing technology evangelist for NVIDIA.
Dude, it's
Let's
lagging.
go around and introduce yourselves.
Bro, I don't know how to fix the lag, bro.
So,
Wait.
hey,
Let me see if.
Co-founder.
My name is Kyle Morrison White, and I'm associate producer for the project.
And I'm Nathan Spandorf, and I'm the senior technical artist on Freddy's.
I'm Joseph Aldrich, and I'm a programmer on Freddy's.
If I see Scott, I'm dead.
Great. But okay, so I think it would be good if everybody could hear a little bit more about Steel Wool, because you guys are a really interesting developer. You're tackling this, it's a game that is, AAA in quality, but you're not a big developer. You're not, staffed with hundreds of people. So what is that like for you to use?
Shut up!
This is like an advanced modern rendered game. This is unlike, a mobile title or something like that where you're trying to optimize, still images or raster images. Here you're trying to do something more advanced. So what is that experience like for you, developing in, with this technology in this day and age?
I'll jump in first. I think we're definitely Steel Wool Studios we're sort of in between worlds, right? Which I actually think a lot of developers are going to start finding themselves where sort of we are. We're not quite, indie small, where it's a small, hand full of artists and engineers, but we're definitely not even close to a AAA studio. So, the benefits of being really indie is, very flexible, very quick to design and develop, but a lot of the harder tasks that you would have that are necessitate a larger crew, you really can't handle as much. With AAA studio, you're really large, you have a large amount of production engineering, but also it's harder to adopt brand new technologies because, their systems, internal development systems are already in place. So we're sort of in this sweet spot where we can go in, we can very quickly, attach a new technology while we're developing. And because our team's relatively small, we're relatively agile. So, the idea of bringing ray tracing into the current Five Nights at Freddy's security breach game was sort of a pipe dream, a few years ago. That the idea of taking ray tracing in general and implementing it in. but not only being able to implement it, but do it pretty quickly. And that's where, Joe and Nathan have come into play, where, Joe has helped implement the technologies that, NVIDIA, you guys have developed and implemented into our system. And then Nathan, as the artist, senior technical artist, is able to sort of take that tool set and help enhance our vision. And that's where we are. It's quick to adopt in, and it's relatively quick to get our artists to utilize it, which has been great.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I felt really lucky to be able to be one of the first people to use this technology, and I've had a really great time, like just being able to see the new things coming in and being able to play with it and learn about it, and it's just been really a fun experience for me. And because we're a small studio, yeah, we are able to kind of churn quickly and implement these things very quickly and try new things that maybe a bigger studio might not be able to immediately adopt. So that's been really interesting and fun to do.
Yeah,
I bet it's gonna
you
so
guys are
nice
one
to
of the first developers to make use of RTXGI. I think certainly in a shipping title that's coming up. But you guys have been early adopters. From our standpoint, that's been really helpful because, well, okay, just to get into that a little more technically, one of the features you guys asked for was a separate emissive boost, because one of the capabilities of RTXGI is to do lighting through emissive surface. This is kind of a big deal because it gives you another way to light the scene. Technically, once you pay for the RTXGI cost, it's lighting for free. So I'm kind of wondering, like from both a technical standpoint and art standpoint, really any way you want to talk about, how's that been as far as taking RTXGI and using it in this type of environment?
Right, that situation was interesting because I was creating these emissive lights and I wasn't able to get the bright enough area. I had this, like, it was maximum brightness and it just kind of was clamping at a certain point.
Yeah.
I've been able to get through that now, and there's been other smaller things, but for the most part, it's been very plug and play for me. Once the system was implemented by Joe, I've been able to just understanding the concepts behind the tool and what the look is that we're going for, being able to put that in there and use that tool has been very straightforward for me. Now that it's in there.
And Joe, in reality, how difficult was it to take this and sort of get it into our system? Because that's always the thing that we're afraid of. It's like, hey, new is always scary, but it seemed pretty quickly you were able to sort of take it and put it in.
It wasn't very difficult. It was mainly just merging the RTX branch into ours for Unreal, and then doing the patch of the RTXGI on top. There really wasn't a whole lot more that had to be done.
Yeah. I think, Richard, it all started actually with your video, like your tutorial video on the RTXGI that I had watched. And then, with our relationship with NVIDIA sort of reaching out like, hey, can we talk to Richard about this? Because it seemed exactly what we needed, with the physical location that we're, the game that exists in. There's a lot of neon. There's a lot of this sort of, on the daylight version of all the locations, it's lit like almost like a casino. So having that global illumination in conjunction with sort of our neon lighting and emissive materials, like Nathan said, it allowed us to get that one step closer to, grounding the player in a real space.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that worked for you. That's good to hear.
I studied that video that you made, and I really just did what you showed us to do, and that worked out pretty well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It was really not anything that unexpected once. And I mean, like a lot of things, you learn I learned by doing and watching other people do, and that's what I was able to do for this. just trying different settings, seeing the effects that they have, and then referring back to your video to see what you were doing differently than what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. That's I have a lighting artist background, so I definitely understand that. I tend to be visual, like show me how you use it, and we can sort of figure it out. Yeah, cool. Can we talk more about just a little bit more about Steel Wool? I'm curious about the size of your company. You say you're not big. What does that mean? I mean, can we talk about that or no?
I'd say, Kyle, what are we up to? About, I think staff-wise, we're about 30. And then with, we have freelancers and contractors that we work with, probably pushing above 50. And that flexes with the projects that we have in-house. So yeah, it's anywhere between 30 to 50, depending on what, during the production, how many productions we have running currently. But, we were at a point when we started, there was only a handful of us. Like, Steel Wool started, honestly, in 2013. There was a few of
Oh, it's glitching.
us.
Dude, it's glitching!
Who is also the creative director of the game. And Stuart, who is Johnson, who is also the co-founder, he's our lead engineer, who was from Intel. And we just we had a passion for games. We decided to get a carve out from our companies to allow us to do this sort of as a side project. Turns out we really liked doing this. And, long story short, we're still, in business, 8 years later, plugging away, and, we've learned a lot. So we started, my background, like you, Richard, I have a technical background. Right. So, I working at Pixar, I was a lighting 3D modeling artist for 12 years. So Steel Wool sort of comes from a very art-centric place, right? That's where our strengths initially were. And, through the years, really bolstering our abilities with, engineering and the technical side of things. And, every project we learn more, and we get, a little bit bigger, and we try and, see how much further we can push. Traditionally, we've done a lot of VR titles. That was sort of one of the foundation pieces of us as a studio, and we still do. Help Wanted, Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted.
I played that game right here.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
I told you before, it freaked me out a little bit at one point. I had to take it off, and my daughter wouldn't play it, so that was
that is always the ringing endorsement of like, I bought it, makes us still play it.
That's what we were trying to do.
Yeah. Something about the VR experience, like it just gets so much more intense. It's
right. So we work in VR. I mean, VR is probably one of the areas that we spend the most of our development projects in. Security Breach is not a VR title. It was one of the ideas of doing a game in which we can really focus on the artistic gameplay, really expanding the game, the franchise itself, with Scott Cawthon, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Cawthon.
It's like, with Security Breach, it allowed us to go in and start looking at things like ray trace reflections and global illumination and all of these things that you can really push on both the PC and the next generation consoles. So, we'll never give up on our, our VR pedigree, but we're also able to sort of, say, hey, this project, it makes sense not to another project and say, this definitely works in VR better. So let's focus on that.
Right. Now, that as a studio, that just gives you a lot of development experience, right? Because if you're developing for Oculus, you kind of have to understand mobile, and if you're doing PC RTX and everything else, I mean, that's quite the range of graphical needs, technology needs. They're almost they can be almost night and day in some ways.
Oh yeah, our first game, was Fly Hunter Origins, which was originally a mobile slash Steam PC game, and actually where we got into a relationship with NVIDIA is we actually built a SKU for the Tegra Shield, right? So
Yeah.
we actually had our very first game had a Tegra Shield SKU. So we've been able to sort of work on multiple platforms early on, and that's why we're sort of comfortable doing it.
Yes,
I think the
tomorrow.
similarity there is
Finally.
being on the forefront of new technology.
It's
It seems like Steel Wool has been
chapter 3.
there a lot.
Yes, that's true.
Fuck what?
Even
Yeah,
then and now.
doing VR development, you have to. I mean, it's one eye looking forward, one eye looking back, right? Because you have to understand how to optimize
What's
for
tomorrow?
a mobile type device. At the same time, you're dealing with new technology. It's not.
Right.
It's not just making
The game
something
release
for,
or trailer?
a tablet or something like that.
Chapter 3.
There's more to it.
The mimic.
I think the breadth of experience that the many people at Stillwell, the backgrounds that we all have, all dive into that, making something feel like a good story, making something feel like a good experience, and having access to the new technologies allows us to do those in different ways and really amp up the effect of like the visuals in this game and like that depth and shadow that it allows. So it's a really exciting thing to be able to leverage in order to tell
I
an
couldn't hear
engagement
you.
story.
What did you say
Yeah.
again?
I think we're all very enthusiastic about learning, and I think that's one of our strengths.
Ew, I don't want to learn about
Learning
learning.
things,
Yeah.
growing in that way.
What?
And then being small enough to be able to absorb those new things and it really benefits.
Yo, where's Fnaf?
Fnaf.
Shut up. There's
Dude,
FNAF's
they're
got.
gonna only talk
If I
about.
can, which
They're
branch
gonna
of the Unreal
tell
Engine are you using?
questions,
Are
and
you
that's
using
it.
NVRTX?
And
Or
then they're
is it your
gonna
own?
talk about devlogs later. This
what sort of
on.
choices have you made there?
Did
We
they
have
say what?
NVRTX merged into the one that we're using.
Yeah, I think we find a lot of developers do that. I mean, we offer a branch, but oftentimes, you might want to take that or cherry pick things out of it, and whatever works best for you. So yeah, I'm curious. So you're using, is it NVRTX 425, and then your own changes on top of that, or how does that work?
We merged the NVRTX. I got 4.25. Yeah, we did use 3 on top of what we had already changed, which is a version of 4.25.
I see. Not is that 425 plus? I know might be getting into weeds for some people, but I'm just curious.
I think it's 426 plus.
No, it's 425 plus.
Is it
Yeah,
425?
425 plus.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's that makes sense. That's a multi-platform development branch basically. So that's logical. Okay, so let's talk about the different technologies you are using, or at least plan to use. RTX-GI is in the mix. DLSS is part of that as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm curious to know just broadly, like how has that development been? If you're using these new technologies, you're using them together. What sort of issues have you hit? Have you hit any issues? I want you guys to be completely honest about this. Don't hold back. Let us have it. If RTX-GI something about DLSS is not working, I want to hear it, and I think other developers would like to hear it too. So, what do you got?
I didn't believe it was going to work, Richard. The DLSS stuff. Is it just? It's like
doubling your frame rate doesn't work for you.
Well, it's just like there's no way this is going to work. It's like I was seeing aliasing, and there's always a huge caveat of, oh, you could use this one, but it's going to do this or it's going to do that. And then seeing the DLSS technology, it's like, yeah, that seems too good to be true. So, I mean, I'll let Joe and Nathan talk about sort of the implementation, but I think as a whole, we have been very, very happy with what we've gotten out of our implementation.
Right.
Yeah, Joe, do you want to start with like how we got it into the engine, then I can do the artistic side.
Yeah, it was just in the NVRTX branch already, so we just enabled it, and set up the DLLs and what else that was needed. And yeah, it's definitely helped a lot with being able to render at a lower resolution, especially with ray tracing, because ray tracing really depends on the resolution.
Yeah, it tends to be a lifesaver if you can cut down on that that rendered image size, the original rendered image size. Too bad we can't do an actual postage stamp. Go back to like the 90s to render that.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like they have to almost go hand in hand. Like ray tracing, ray tracing's been around forever as a technology, but to get it real time has been a Herculean task from all different sort of pushes in the industry, and now we're at that point, but it's still taxing. So to pair it with DLSS, which is able to get the performance boosted significantly, you're now at a point where we can see really, really good frame rates with really, really good implementation of ray tracing.
Yeah, I found that when I'm trying to get the visual look that I need to get, like with ray trace reflection and even shadows and other advanced, but when DLSS is enabled, really it's a lifesaver. It brings up the that I need to make the quality, the visual acuity there.
I mean, unless you guys can come up with the Five Nights at Freddy's preset button,
yeah,
just press, and then everything we need for our game works would be perfect. So, I mean, if you guys could do that, that'd be great. But
I'm just gonna make you guys steer to all.
But I mean, that's the thing. As we're developing the game, it's an ambitious. The environment is an ambitious setting, right? This is the largest environment we've ever made. This is also probably the largest environment in all the Five Nights at Freddy's games, and the goal was to make this feel like a living, breathing, and terrifying space in certain circumstances. And so that being able to get us closer, we're not, this is the thing. It's like we talked a little bit earlier. It's like, well, are we hyper realistic? Are we stylistic? It's sort of like stylistically realistic, right? It's you would take some creative design liberties based on the original concept of the franchise, but the more we can ground the player in a sense of reality, even though it is sort of a fantastical place to be, the more when we up the fear and the darkness and when it starts to get really scary, it's definitely more palpable to feel that fear when you feel like you're in a real space. And I think a lot of the technology that we've been using has been gearing us to get to that feeling of, I feel like I'm here and this is terrifying, right? So with the concept of ray tracing is also, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. When you're lighting, raster lighting and you're doing baked lighting, you can break all the rules of physics, right? You can put lights that have no earthly business being there. And with ray tracing, it forces you to have a little bit more of a realistic palette and design sensibilities. So you get the benefit of having these realistic looking shadows, realistic reflections and ambient occlusion, and a little bit of the price is you don't get 100% of the creative freedom that you normally would want from a lighting point of view, but that trade-off more than pays off, once you see sort of the end results, right? Like, we have some, Nathan has some screenshots of sort of these A and Bs of, hey, this is with the ray tracing on, and this is with ray tracing off, and you can tell, it's like, hey, yeah, if you never saw the ray tracing on, you're like, that's pretty good. And then you see with the ray tracing, like, no, that feels better.
Right. Can we look at those? Is this probably a good time?
Sure.
We always like A/B comparisons. See what ray tracing brings to the table.
Yeah. This is one of our sets, and it has RTX on, and then this one has it off.
Ooh. Some
Right. I can see you're losing a lot of the grounding reflections.
Yeah. Shadows, reflections, AO.
No, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you go back, Nathan, to the one with it off, it's like, it looks really cool. It does. It's still really pretty. It's from a design point of view, it's what we would want. And then once you turn it on, and that's the whole point of ray tracing, it should be subtle. It shouldn't be over the top. But once you see it on, you're like, it feels more grounded, more realistic. And I think, that just makes everything better, and things make everything more visceral when you're playing in the world. when you feel like you're there more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is with RTX GI as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
what we're looking at here is RTX reflections, RTX shadows, RTX ambient occlusion, and RTX GI on these images that
Yeah, that's
have
great.
RTX turned on.
Another one.
yeah, you're not kidding, are you? Like spatially, especially compared to previous Five Nights games, this is much bigger. You're dealing with a lot more room. I don't want to say anything that's potentially a spoiler for the game because we should avoid that, right?
Well, one of the challenges.
I'm kind of curious what your largest space is, or because it's set in a mall. Is that correct?
It is a entertainment complex.
Okay. Yes. Right.
But yeah, so this is one of the locations. I mean, this is, I think this is one of my favorite examples of it. Nathan, if you could toggle back and forth. If you just look at the surface of the tables, you look at the Mylar balloons, you look at the ceiling above the tables on the left, just that added sense of the bounce lighting, the reflection, the ambient occlusion, right? It just all of a sudden, like it looks great here, but when you turn it back on, it just has that added sense of there is like a realistic life to this, right?
Yeah.
And it
that added a lot more to the table in the foreground than I expected. I was looking at that part in particular with the mustard and ketchup there, and I always love that about like ray traced ambient occlusion and GI and reflections. Like it has the capability to just make it just feel more grounded, more in the space. Yeah, and that definitely translates.
Honestly, the goal is like, the kids that are growing up these days, this should be all eventually just taken for granted, right? This is not something that they're gonna be like, oh, wow, look at that, that's ray trace, because they'll have no idea what it was like to live in a world where the games weren't ray traced, right? So, for us, for me specifically, it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing, because I've grown up in a world where this was not feasible at real time.
Can you take back to the other image again? Yeah.
And this is also rendered at a very high sample rate in terms of the reflection samples.
Okay. Yeah,
So
the shading quality on the surfaces is much better under ray tracing.
And if you take a look specifically at that foreground temple that you're talking about, but also the ceiling directly above that pillar with that pink emissive light.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead and switch back over.
I'm back.
Right. And this is that ground
sense of realism.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But one of the challenges though is that with the GI, we don't get some dark areas that we were meaning to get. So because it's realistic, the light bounces over there and it doesn't go fully dark. So that's been one of the struggles that we, like Freddy's and horror games in general, you want very dark areas that kind of creepy in these dark corners, and with GI sometimes that kind of gets washed out. So that has been a challenge.
A lot of the game that we've shown so far, whether it be in still images or the trailer, we've shown sort of what you would consider the daytime happy version of all of these sets. What we haven't really shown, and that'll be in the game, is, well, what does it feel like when the lights are off, or the neon's down, or you're in the dark, the really dark version of all of these sets. And that's where we have to play, with a very delicate hand, the global illumination, because as Nathan said, is that because it really takes into account the balance, there may be areas where we really want it to go unnaturally dark. So we really then have to art direct and curate that light. So, it is that play of being able to art direct, but also use the tools of, this realistic ray tracing technology, right? And knowing when to dial it down and when to sort of keep it full bloom.
Sure. Well, this might be an area where we could coordinate with you, just like, giving a separate emissive control.
Right.
It could be that maybe we need a sort of an opposite control, right, to artificially clamp down GI within the volume. It's not the worst idea. I mean, I know what you mean, because you want those dark corners sometimes. You don't necessarily want colored bounce lighting everywhere all the time. You don't want to lose those deep ambient shadows of that range. So that's definitely an interesting topic. But yeah, it's something we can discuss and maybe figure out a refinement to the technology.
Almost like negative light, like a light suck, like anti-light.
RTX-GI by default, it's only got one mode, infinite bounce lighting. So it doesn't do anything else. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe there needs to be a less than infinite mode. I'm not sure.
For example, there's a bathroom that has all white walls, and then one bright little emissive thing, and that emission kind of bounces around the room and really brightens the room.
Yes.
In an unnatural way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we have seen that. I think we had a similar test internally where we had a pure white room with light source coming in, and I think it was probably a bit brighter than expected.
Right.
But yeah, these are areas of improvement, areas of development for sure. Maybe it might technically be doing the right thing, because getting a pure white room with maybe a hot light source is, I'm not sure exactly what that should look like, but it could be technically correct. But maybe we want to adjust the technology to clamp it back a bit.
A stylized one way, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is a really interesting sort of using a new technology that's effectively mimicking reality more effectively than we're used to. Like we're used to seeing cinema, which is an extremely controlled environment. We're used to seeing hyper-stylized games, which are an extremely controlled environment.
Yes.
And here we are in a stylized environment where the lighting decides what you see and what you don't see. When we're not used to being able to just like turn the switch on and go, okay, bring me reality. And that's what this is intending to do. And doing it very effectively, which then has the downside of like, wait, we're in a horror game. Why is it too bright? Okay, we have to address that now.
Right. Here's our logo.
Oh yeah, you've got more images. We're still looking at that one. I totally blanked on that.
That's okay, yeah. So here's our logo without RTX. And then with RTX, it just
I love how the checkerboard pattern comes out.
Yeah, kind of that down here, you can really tell. And then the GI against the wall.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. Look at that.
Right. Yeah, you really get a sense of how the lighting affects the world with the GI here.
Yeah.
That neon bouncing, right? It's really, this was one of my favorite images when we first doing the test. Like, you really get a sense of what that illumination can do when you have the GI turned on.
There's a lot happening here.
Yeah, that's really great. Can you go back to the raster image? Yeah, so that looks like you probably have a little bit of bloom there. Is that right? There's some bloom in the post process?
Yes.
Right. Your GI is almost strong enough that you could almost get rid of the bloom and just use the GI to sort of simulate it and save that, like whatever that 0.2 millisecond cost on the bloom cost.
Right.
What a difference.
Yeah. And that's where dialing in things for different platforms becomes necessary.
Yeah.
Because maybe we want to get rid of the bloom here, and then depending on the hardware, have it visible here.
Right.
Because this still looks okay. Like if you saw this, you wouldn't question it really, but this looks just so much better.
And that's the thing. It should feel. You shouldn't be able to sort of really articulate the perception of it. Like it just feel better, right? It should feel prettier without having to be over the top. And I think that's the whole point of ray tracing. Is it's a very pretty patina that makes things just everything across the board better. But the average game player who may not think about things in what's a ray trace, what's a raster, they're not aware of it, but it inherently feels better, visually better, right? Yeah. And it's very hard to articulate, but it's just there.
No, you're more used to that kind of rendering anyway. Based on your background, having worked at Pixar. When did Pixar start ray tracing images?
I I mean, Finding Nemo, it was Finding Dory actually, I believe was Pixar's first ray trace film. Believe it or not, a lot of it was just it looked, all the lighting was amazing, but it was always rastered images, rendered in RenderMan. So like I said, the technology was always there. It's just it was so exponentially expensive to introduce ray tracing and eventually global illumination into the mix. But now you got to see that most of the modern animated films that you'll see or VFX that you see take into account ray tracing, and obviously transcended into the gaming world, in which every iteration these games get closer and closer to looking.
So this looks good, but this is a lot closer to what you're saying in the film quality would be, but in real time.
Yeah.
And we still have blended reflection captures, and we still are using a lot of tricks that a game has to use to be able to run in real time. But it's just great that we have access to this new technology.
Yeah. Probably one of our older renders, right? So this is, the set is at this point, the location's been updated, and the lighting's been updated. But this was a good first test of what does it look like having all of that, and you can there's a marked difference between.
Yeah. You can tell which one's which right away by the reflection floor and behaved.
At the same time, that we can point out, because we are really familiar with the on-off switch of RTX.
Yeah.
Like I play on a non-RTX card just so I can make sure that we have eyes in the process that don't have RTX, because not every player is going to be able to have an RTX card.
Right.
That's the images that I have.
I did want to ask, in taking the NVRTX branch, there are other technologies there that you could potentially find useful. Has any of that come into play? I mean, besides the obvious ones, RTX GI, DLSS. But there are lesser known ones like hybrid translucency, volumetric fog shadows, and a ton of technical improvements, various refinements, speed ups, just all kinds of stuff that's gone into the engine, or things to improve compatibility. So is anything like that come into play, or no?
I think right now we've been working, as there's so many different teams working on getting the game done, designing the game, that I think those technologies are something that we'll have to implement toward the back nine of development, right? We know we had to get RTX, global illumination, the ray tracing, the LSS. Those were huge pillars for making sure that we can do what we needed to do to get the ray tracing working and working at a good frame rate. And then as we get closer to launch, all these other technologies are things that we can look into that help us refine the look and also performance, right? So it's always sort of rough to find development. Like, hey, these are the big things. Let's deal with these now. Get them in working properly and solidly, and then we can start piecing in these other new components as we go. And I think that's where we are currently in development. I would say,
Ew, what the
does that sound right? Joseph and Nathan, I mean, you guys are more into the trenches than I am.
I mean, I turned on translucency to test, and it looks really great, and I think we do want that. But in the build, it took our player character and stretched its reflection across all reflective surfaces in a really bizarre way. So I think we're going to have to do some more development on that. And like Dayton said, we haven't had the time yet to get into that, but I do think we are on the path to doing that, because it looks like the translucency, at least in my mind, looks really great. I think we do want to do that.
Cool.
And that's one of the things, Richard, when we are still a medium-sized team, it's like you have to pick your battles. Like, what are you doing first, right? Because you can't just all of a sudden, hey, we got a translucency team, and the translucency team will work for the next 3 months on, that's where you start getting to the point of like, well, we have to sort of schedule that in, and that's
Yeah.
where.
So Nathan is the translucency team.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nathan, you're the
And my first test crashed the editor and made all reflections messed up. But
Yeah, that was one of the unintentionally horrifying things that we experienced.
Yeah,
Just had like
it was kind of cool.
this face on everything. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't think we want to release that. Part of me does.
I don't even know if we could have done that if we tried to. I don't know what was happening there.
That sounds really impressive. I actually want to see that. That's
One of those like spoofs that we take a recording of, and then we have like a database of like, these are these bizarre things that happened because.
Yeah.
But
okay. Yeah, I think
We'll
that's
get there.
well. No, that's all fair because that sounds like a somewhat expected and typical development because yeah, you do have these big technologies. You got to make sure everything you're doing graphically is going to work with them, and even develop your look and your image and all that sort of thing. Make sure DLSS works. Make sure RTX-GI works. A lot of the optimizations that are specific to NBRTX, we try to, you know, they're fairly transparent or they're CVARs. So you just put in, you know, it's like maybe an on-off bit, and it's not like a major feature. There are a couple of them that are floating around in there, like hybrid translucency. It really just gives you another way to do translucency. It's just another option, right? So you have the actual ray trace translucency, and then you have raster translucency, and hybrid is basically supposed to be the blend between the two. So, but yes, we can. That's an offline discussion. Probably not a for here thing. But
also,
Richard's going to give us a tutorial on how to.
yeah.
I could do that.
That also we have to deal with is that we're going to be backwards compatible. So when an art dials in something and then we switch on or off ray tracing, overall, it looks different. So we need to dial it in kind of in both ways. And then when a new feature is introduced, that changes the way something looks. So we need to account for it being on and it being off.
Yes.
So
That's one of the goals actually with hybrid translucency. Just to at a very high level to explain that, it's meant to keep compatibility with like your existing particle effects and your existing materials, because things will look differently under ray trace translucency. Things will look different, or some things just don't even show up. Like
the thumbnail's still there in the screen.
cascade particles
Yeah,
don't show up ray trace translucency on. You may hybrid translucency gives you that back. So it's but everything's got trade-offs, right? So you're making choices and decisions about how you want to implement these details. Yeah. But the whole goal with hybrid translucency is to make it easier for you and more compatible with like raster methods of rendering stuff.
Yeah, we had decals off for a while in translucency and reflection and ray trace in general, and we found that CVAR in there eventually. But those kind of things just dying.
Because your decals were disappearing, or
they were not visible in reflections or any ray traces. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there are.
And that's what I blame Nathan. I'm just like, Nathan, what did you break? It's like, what? It was working.
And I blamed NVIDIA.
You blamed NVIDIA, and then realized, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you've noticed with ray tracing in general, like most everything is there today. 90% of object types and material types are supported, but there are exceptions, right? It makes sense. Certain legacy things aren't there anymore. BSP, as an example, is not supported in ray tracing because Epic has decided that it's not the future. Like they're not interested in supporting it going forward. So that's not, you can't reflect BSP geometry, but certain other things that you'd want to reflect, like say spline meshes, are also not currently supported. So yeah, there are still some gaps in ray tracing, some issues like that. But yeah, if you don't make use of those objects or they're not relevant to reflect, then it's not an issue typically. It just all kind of depends on what your content is and what you're dealing with.
We use spline heavily, but not as much BSP.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've talked about a lot. So I guess to wrap this up, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing this, and of course, thank everybody who showed up to hear us talk about the game and the technology. Is there anything you guys want to add before we close this out?
Oh, come on.
I would say, just to pat you guys on the back a little bit, you guys have been really great to work with and have been really helpful with us. So it's been a lot easier implementing this stuff because you guys have been very generous with your time. It's not like we have, we're not a AAA studio. I mean, that's the thing that's nice is that, you guys have shared your sort of knowledge and helped us integrate this stuff pretty quickly and seamlessly, and we're sort of really appreciative of that. And it's, hopefully the proof's in the pudding. Like the stuff that we're making can show a lot of the other developers that you don't need a massive team to be able to integrate these cutting edge technologies into their game. Even small indie teams or a small indie developer, a single person can take these and integrate them in and make things that look amazing relatively quickly. So, it's sort of a testament to the technology and how easy it's been for us to integrate.
Very well said. Thank you. Actually, I think we're constantly, like, we work with all sizes of teams, right? We do work with AAAs. We do a lot of work with smaller studios like yourself, and there's value everywhere, right? Like you guys being able to use this technology and implement it the way you have does show that it's maturing, and we want to make it even easier to use and better to use. So in theory, as time goes on, this will get easier and easier for people. We want to try to streamline the development as much as we possibly can. So yeah, make suggestions by all means.
5 nights, but just give me that.
We do need it easy, but it is. You'd be surprised. It has come up with other developers. Like people have said, how easy can you make this? Like ray tracing, just like flip a button and just give us everything we want. Mm-hmm. So it's I mean, there's a lot of challenges with something like that, but it's always worth thinking about because the easier we can make it, the easier the software is, the more robust it is, the better it is for everybody.
I think right now, I mean, the base level of, hey, turn it on goes a long way, right? Like anything else, it's always going to be how good your art team is and how good your artists are to take that and go beyond, just turning on the, hey, make reflective button. But, it does get us really far very quickly. And that's one of the best things, right? So that way our artists really can just spend their time focusing on polishing the pixels, making it look really good, and hit the art direction notes that our directors and designers have.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Anything else we want to add before closing up shop? I take that as a no. Okay.
I think we're good.
We're good. Okay. No, thanks, guys. This is a really good talk. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Hey!
Okay, I may have to end the stream here, guys. So I know that was a useless one, well, we're not ending the stream yet.
I am.
Chats will be on this page in a few minutes. Recording? Wait, fill out a short survey on the session for your chance to win an NVIDIA hoodie. NVIDIA merchandise.
I don't like that. Guys, where are we? I'm gonna go eat.
That's a devlog. It's like a scenario.
So there's gonna be more.
What's the NVIDIA hoodie look like? Ooh, okay.
So there's gonna be more.
Oh yeah.
So there's gonna be more. So there's
NVIDIA drip?
I said I said, oh, fuck. Wait, is there another, another gonna be wait, is there gonna be another FNAF security breach talking thing?
Yeah, there's gotta be yeah, okay. There's gotta be more scenarios, which is day, afternoon, and night scenario. And sometimes there's gotta be a sneak peek of the game, like behind the scenes and stuff. And they're gonna show some more devlogs of what they're working on.
Oh, yeah, baby. What am I doing?
First of all, they just started to show the same security breach trailer for on purpose. I thought there was gonna be a gameplay trailer at yesterday. No, not yesterday, like April 13th.
NVIDIA drip.
I mean 12. NVIDIA drip, yes.
I may have to end the stream here, guys, and then stream later. So bye.